Keeping up with business and economic news feels like drinking from a fire hose sometimes, doesn't it?
It really does. Information overload is real.
Exactly. So welcome to the deep dive. We do the sifting for you, pulling out the key insights you actually need.
Yep. And today we're looking at a whole batch of sources from May 22nd, 2025, mostly focused on Malaysia, business, economy, a bit of politics.
But also touching on some key international trends, right? We've got financial reports, tech news, trade updates, quite the mix.
The goal really is to cut through that noise, give you the surprising bits, the relevant stuff, a clear overview of what's been happening.
So you stay informed without getting buried in the details. Okay, let's jump in. First up, a big one in Malaysian retail, the Eco-Shop IPO.
Yeah, this is definitely making waves. They're set to list tomorrow, May 23rd, and the projected market cap is, well, it's big, RM 6.49 billion.
Wow, RM 6.49 billion. That puts them in the same kind of conversation as Mr. DIY and 99 Speed Mart, doesn't it?
Exactly. Those are major retail IPOs we've seen before. So Eco-Shop joining that league, it's significant. People are watching closely.
And I gather the analysts are not all on the same page about that valuation.
Not entirely, no.
Yeah.
You've got some looking at the numbers, like the forward price to earnings, the PEG ratio.
Right, how much you're paying for future growth.
Precisely. And they're saying, maybe a bit high compared to the others. Potential concern about living up to that price tag.
But there's another side to that coin.
Absolutely. Others are pointing squarely at the growth potential. They've got, what, around 350 stores now? Compare that to Mr. DIY or 99 Speed Mart, who have thousands. There's a clear argument for massive expansion. Plus, their whole dollar store model.
The fixed low prices.
Yeah, that tends to do well when the economy's shaky. People look for value. So some see huge runway there.
So it's that classic tension, current metrics versus future story. And operationally, are they efficient?
That's another interesting point. Their cash conversion cycle, how fast they turn stock into cash, is incredibly quick, like 33 days.
33 days. How does that compare?
Well, Mr. DIY is more like 148 days. So Eco-Shop is turning over inventory and getting cash back way faster. Very efficient.
Okay. And same-store sales are strong, too.
Reportedly, yes. Plus, the growth strategy isn't just stores. It's also about logistics hubs to support that expansion.
Got it. Okay, let's pivot from traditional retail to something more digital, buy now, pay later, or BNPL. There was a Shopee survey in Malaysia.
Yes, over 40,000 people responded, and the findings were, well, quite striking, actually.
How so?
The main reason people are using BNPL, according to 81% of them, isn't for splurging. It's for handling financial shocks.
Shocks? Like what?
Essentials. Things like baby formula, medical bills, emergency repairs, even insurance premiums.
Wow. Okay, that really shifts the narrative, doesn't it? Less about impulse buys, more about coping?
Exactly. It seems for many, it's a way to manage cash flow, bridge gaps between paychecks, or handle emergencies. The survey found 59% say it's essential for daily needs.
And is it because they don't have other options?
That seems to be a big part of it. 55% said they have no other access to credit. That's concerning. It points to potential issues with financial inclusion.
And another survey backed this up.
Yeah, the CCOB task force found 73% of DMPL users are low-income earners with limited financing alternatives, so it paints a picture of reliance.
And these users actually want BNPL accepted in more places for essentials.
That's the indicated, yeah. Wider acceptance, especially for medical, groceries, the basics.
Even though they report feeling more in control financially using it.
It's a bit of a paradox. They feel it helps manage debt, gives control, but the underlying reason for using it needing credit for necessities is the worrying part.
Is there any positive trend in the data?
Well, apparently overdue amounts and late payments have seen a decrease recently, so perhaps some improvement in repayment behavior, which is good.
Okay. Interesting dynamics there. Let's switch focus now. Malaysia's semiconductor industry sounds like there's a push coming.
Yes, MEDI, the Ministry of International Trade and Industry, they've signaled new incentives are coming in July.
Trying to boost the sector further.
Exactly. The minister stressed the need for both government financial support and the right policies. Malaysia already punches above its weight, about 13% of global back-end semiconductor output.
Right. So these incentives could help solidify or even grow that position.
That's the aim. And it's not just domestic focus. They're actively diversifying export markets, working on free trade agreements like the upcoming one with South Korea.
And showing up at industry events, too.
Absolutely. They had a big presence at Semicon SEA 2025.
Yeah.
It's all about connecting internationally in this space.
Now, sticking with tech and government, there was some noise about a Huawei AI project. What was that about?
Yeah, media had to come out and clarify things pretty quickly, basically saying, look, this AI project involving Huawei, it's a private sector thing.
Not a government-backed initiative.
No, not endorsed, not managed by the government, not part of any official national AI program. They made that very clear.
Why the strong clarification, do you think? Geopolitics.
Almost certainly. You had reports the U.S. government was, let's say, interested in this project, concerned about China's AI influence spreading.
Right. Sensitive territory.
Very. So media emphasized commitment to export controls, national security. They're interested in building Malaysia's own AI capacity, but they stress doing it with due diligence.
Okay. But on a more definite AI front, Nvidia confirmed the YTL Power supercomputer project is moving ahead.
Yes, that seems firmly on track, targeting a Q3 launch this year. It's a pretty high-spec machine using Nvidia's latest Grace Blackwell superchip.
GB200.
That's the one, running on their DGX cloud platform, and it'll be housed at YTL's Green Data Center campus down in Johor.
And Nvidia mentioned specific reasons for choosing Malaysia?
They did. Pointed to stable power, which is crucial for these things, and Malaysia's manufacturing capabilities.
And this DGX cloud, what does that actually mean for developers?
Think of it as an all-in-one AI supercomputing service in the cloud. It gives AI developers the heavy-duty processing power, the software tools, everything they need to build and train AI models much faster. It sort of accelerates the whole process.
Got it. Accelerating AI development. Okay, let's shift gears again. Oil and gas, Petronas and Petros in Sarawak, a joint declaration.
Yeah, this seems quite significant. Signed in the spirit of federalism, they said. It basically sets out principles for how the national oil company, Petronas, and Sarawak state-owned Petros will work together going forward.
So, clarifying the relationship, what are the key points?
A big one is that existing Petronas deals won't be affected by Sarawak state laws, and Petros's role as the main gas aggregator in Sarawak is formally respected.
Okay, so trying to create more certainty for everyone involved.
Seems like it. And it also paves the way for future joint projects in Sarawak, maybe bringing in international partners. They even mentioned collaborating on renewables, hydrogen power generation, broader energy scope.
Positioning Sarawak as a regional energy hub.
That appears to be the ambition, yes. More than just traditional oil and gas.
And this fits into the bigger picture of the MA63 talks, right? Sarawak's push for more autonomy.
Absolutely. Sarawak's been very clear. Top priorities are sorting out the special grant formula, how much federal funding they get, and getting more parliamentary seats.
Has there been any movement on the grant?
Some. The federal government agreed to double the annual grant for 5 years, up from RM 300 million to RM 600 million.
But that's temporary.
Right. Sarawak wants a permanent, agreed-upon formula, not just a 5-year fix. So, progress, but the core issue isn't fully resolved.
Okay, now staying in finance. Potential bank merger talk. Afin and AMB.
Yeah, rumors swirling about that. But CMB Securities, for one, poured some cold water on it.
Why? What's the concern?
Shareholder dilution, mainly. They ran a couple of scenarios.
Right.
And both involved issuing a lot of new shares to make the merger happen.
Meaning existing shareholder slices of the pie get smaller?
It's exactly. Less ownership percentage, potentially lower earnings per share. There were also reports the Sarawak government, a big Afin shareholder, might be keen, but that dilution factor is a major hurdle.
Interesting. Okay, something a bit different now. Gold-backed pawn loan bonds. Sounds niche.
It is, but it's first for Malaysia. Basically, a company called TY Consolidated Capital bundled up pawn loans from Tai Yong pawnbrokers and issued bonds backed by the gold collateral.
And it got a good rating.
A top preliminary rating, AAA, from RAM Ratings. That's pretty strong.
What makes it seem so safe?
Mostly strong over-collateralization, meaning the value of the gold held is significantly higher than the bond value. Creates a big buffer. Plus, they ran tough stress tests looking at default rates, gold price drops.
Okay.
And Tai Yong has a long history in the business.
So confidence in the underlying assets and the structure.
Yeah, and there are features like a revolving structure and mechanisms to pay back senior bondholders quickly if things start looking risky. Lots of safeguards built in.
Okay. Quick hits on some other company news. Bumi Armada.
Subsidiary got full operating rights for the Kojo block in Indonesia. Oil and gas potential there. Fits their offshore development strategy.
Perdana Petroleum.
Looking at financing new vessels, some of their current fleet are getting old by Petronas standards. Thinking about new builds for longevity, and maybe, just maybe, a first-ever dividend as their balance sheet looks better.
S P Setia. Sticking to sales targets despite a weaker Q1.
Yeah, they say upcoming launches and a solid backlog of unbilled sales give them confidence. Q1 was lower, mainly due to timing of project handovers, apparently.
Public bank.
Decent Q1 profit jump, about 6%. Higher interest and non-interest income, their new insurance business helped. Loan growth, too, offset a bit by higher staff costs, but overall positive. Still cautious about global risks, though.
Duopharma, looking at Indonesia for halal products.
Big time. Indonesia's bringing in mandatory halal rules soon, so Duopharma sees a big opportunity there for their over-the-counter stuff. They think it's a better bet than the Middle East right now, partly due to easier registration.
And Hector REIT, big diversification plans.
Yep, ambitious ones. Want to double their portfolio size in 5 years and get 20% of their assets outside of retail, looking at education, industrial, even renewables. Assets with long leases, good yields, plus upgrading existing malls like Subang Parade.
Seems like lots of inward investment interest, too. Japan.
Definitely interested. Looking at the Asian Power Grid, that Sarawak-Johor cable idea, green investments, hydro, also Malaysia's data centers, and the food sector, especially with the halal advantage. Talk of collaboration through something called AZEC, Asia Zero Emission Community.
Australia's keen, too, partly because of U.S. trade policies.
That's the angle. They're actively looking to strengthen ties with ASEAN, including Malaysia. Diversifying trade partners seems key. They want to sell more clean and green food, wine, critical minerals, and boost digital collaboration.
Okay, now, we need to touch on something more historical, but back in the news. Allegations around that French submarine deal from 2002.
Right. Important context here. This comes from French prosecutors' investigative documents from last year. The allegation is that former PM Najib Razak had a role in preparing contracts potentially linked to bribes.
But critically,
the reports state there's no evidence he personally received payments, and their French prosecutors haven't recommended charges against him or sought an indictment.
So allegations about involvement in contract preparation, but not receipt of funds or formal charges against him.
Correct. His lawyer strongly denies any wrongdoing, questioning the timing and evidence. The focus seems to be on payments made to specific companies, Paramekar and Terasasi.
Okay, understood. And another ongoing legal matter, Tan Sri Shamsuddin versus his sons at Sapura Holdings.
Yeah, testimony in a related court case brought up an old lawsuit from 2012. Shamsuddin had sued his sons, alleging they didn't honor a promise about his stake in a related company. Seems like a complex family business dispute surfacing again. Even involved talk about family values in court.
Messy. All right, just a few quick mentions before we go global. Destiny has a new major shareholder.
Yep. A former Petimus exec lost an appeal on insider trading.
MSCC might take further action in a missing person case.
The Penang undersea tunnel is still seen as relevant by the state government.
And Renuco is seeking court help for debt restructuring.
A real mix, showing the constant churn in the business and legal world.
Okay, let's zoom out quickly. World news highlights from around the same time, oil prices were up.
Yeah, jitters about Middle East supply, potential Israel-Iran tensions bubbling again, pushed crude prices higher.
And the Gaza aid situation? Still problematic.
Deeply concerning. Despite promises and pressure, reports indicated aid was still struggling to get in consistently. A dire humanitarian picture.
Over in the U.S., Morgan Stanley seemed positive on U.S. stocks and bonds, but not the dollar.
Kind of a buy America, sell the dollar call. They expect Fed rate cuts to help stocks and bonds, but think the dollar might weaken as U.S. growth maybe slows relative to others and interest rate gaps narrow.
And traders agreed, betting against the dollar.
Options market indicators showed record bearishness on the dollar. Lots of uncertainty driving that trade wars, U.S. fiscal situation maybe.
But Singapore's central bank chief still sees U.S. dollar assets as essential.
Yeah, basically said they're irreplaceable in the global system.
Yeah.
Emphasized the importance of the U.S. Treasury market. No real alternative, despite any short-term wobbles or downgrades.
Singapore's new cabinet, Lawrence Wong, staying as finance minister.
That's right. Signals a strong focus on the economy and continuity there as he takes the PM role.
Taiwan's central bank did something interesting with its currency. Let it rise sharply.
Deliberately, it seems. They let the Taiwan dollar soar early in May to kind of reset market expectations, stop people betting on it going even higher. Strategic move.
Indonesia cut rates, but ready to defend the rupiah.
Classic balancing act. Lowered rates to support growth, but making clear they'll step in to prevent the currency falling too far, especially with trade war worries.
That big Chinese battery maker CATL's IPO got even bigger.
Yeah, they exercised the option to sell more shares, the green shoe. Raised HK $41 billion in total. Shows massive investor appetite for the EV battery story, despite everything.
Nvidia's CEO had some strong words about U.S. chip export curbs to China, calling them a failure.
Pretty blunt. Jensen Huang argued the curbs aren't stopping China's AI progress, just hurting Nvidia's market share and boosting Chinese rivals like Huawei and DeepSeek. Said Chinese researchers will advance anyway, might as well use U.S. tech.
And the U.S. is moving towards duties on Chinese battery materials.
Potentially. Commerce Department flagged concerns about subsidies for things like graphite. Could mean higher EV costs down the line if duties are imposed.
But a poll showed the U.S. economic outlook is still weak despite any trade truce.
Seems underlying concerns remain. Economists still worried about growth, fiscal issues, even with less immediate trade friction.
China ran a record budget deficit, spending big.
Looks like it. Ramping up government spending, fiscal stimulus, likely to counter trade headwinds and support the economy. Infrastructure spending notably up.
But China and ASEAN finished talks on an upgraded trade deal.
Yes, that's a positive step for regional integration. Broadening the FTA to cover digital economy, green tech, deepening those ties.
BYD's Hong Kong shares hit a record premium over its mainland shares.
Interesting divergence. Suggests international investors might be more bullish on BYD right now than domestic ones. Could be liquidity, could be perceptions of quality.
Baidu saw a surprise sales jump despite the AI battles in China.
Yeah, it seems demand for computing power for AI training maybe from rivals using their platforms. Offset weaker ad revenue. Gave them some breathing room.
Eric Trump was in Vietnam breaking ground on a resort.
Shows U.S. business interest continues there, even alongside ongoing trade talks and diplomatic stuff.
And finally, Japan's farm minister quit over a comment about rice.
Yes, highlights how sensitive food prices are politically in Japan, especially with potential elections looming.
Wow. Okay, that was quite the tour. A really busy period, clearly.
Definitely. A real mix in Malaysia, growth signs like the IPO, but also those vulnerabilities like the BNPL reliance.
And overlaid with all these global shifts, trade, tech, geopolitics, that inevitably wash onto Malaysian shores. Plus, those reminders of past complexities still being unpacked.
It really underscores how interconnected everything is. A trade decision in D.C. affects investment in Johor. AI breakthroughs in one place create demand elsewhere. It's one big system.
Absolutely. And our aim here is just to give you that shortcut, that filtered view, so you can grasp the key threads without reading for days.
Exactly. So the thought to leave you with, perhaps, given that reliance we saw in BNPL for basic needs, and considering these global trade winds shifting, how should individuals, and maybe businesses too in Malaysia, think about preparing for whatever economic weather might be coming next?
Definitely something to mull over.